right there. Oh my gosh. Good thing it wasn't radaring though. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Treats on the Streets. Today, you might be able to guess what we're going to be doing. Let's get this box open. What do we have here? Looks like an upper radiator hose, a lower radiator hose, and a water pump. Hopefully this one's better than the last. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of an overhaul on the cooling system. As I have mentioned before, I already have a Mishimoto radiator, a Mishimoto electric fan, and a Mishimoto thermostat. We have a little bit of a coolant leak going on. You can see it a little better than in the last video. See how there's a bunch of splatter here on the intake, and then down there there's a bunch of splatter on the housing for the oil filter. I still haven't been able to get a solid view to know whether it's leaking from the housing of the thermostat or whether it's leaking from this little rubber O-ring around the water pump, or there's also right there, that little round circle right there is called a weep hole. It could be leaking from there as well because of a blown shaft seal on the water pump or some other reason, but you do have to kind of do a lot of stuff to get to any of this, so I figured if I'm gonna take everything out, I might as well just replace it all. I think for the water pump was about 50 bucks, and then those two hoses probably cost me another 15 bucks, so for 65 bucks, I don't wanna have to go through the trouble of trying to fix one thing and then take this all out all over again. So we're just gonna do it all at one time and hopefully it fixes it somehow. Also, once we put all this stuff back on, like the housing for the thermostat and the water pump, I'm gonna put a little bead of this around where the gaskets go, basically just around the edge of everything, to make sure that if it is one of these gaskets that is leaking, which was suggested by a few of you guys in the comments, that it is not going to leak anymore. In order to do what we have to do today, the first thing that we're gonna do is drain all the coolant from the car. Then we have to remove the serpentine belt and probably take out this fan. Once we get all that drained, I will take off this pulley, which you can see the bolts for underneath this thermostat housing, and then we will remove the water pump as well as the 4 bolts that hold this housing on. We'll take that off, and then maybe I can get a better view at that point to exactly understand what was leaking. So, let's get started. First thing I did was take this little tray off. I do not think that this is OEM. Not too bad. Any minute now. Now what I think we will do is remove this reservoir, because we need to remove this reservoir in order to get the fan off, because it's connected to the bracket that holds the fan on. And then we'll get the fan out of here. A few things to mention here in case you're gonna be doing this at home yourself with any of this stuff. If, when it comes time to pull off the pulley for the water pump, which I'm shining the light on right now, just the water pump, the pulley's already off right here. You'll see the outside of it like this. And these 4 nuts, or these 4 bolts I mean, are what are on the outside of that. Don't take off the serpentine belt until you crack these loose, otherwise this will just spin and you won't be able to do it. So make sure to leave the serpentine belt on, and then you crack those loose. And then to get the serpentine belt off, there is a little tensioner pulley, which I'm shining the light on right now. It may not look like that with a little silver hole in the middle, because this little cap goes over that, so you pop the cap off, have access to that with an 8mm Allen thing, whatever those are called. Loosen that tensioner up. As you can see, I've got the belt hanging off, so we're good to go with that. I got the fan removed and set to the side right there. What else did I take off? Looks like I have the reservoir still connected and everything, just move that out of the way. I had to take off this front tray too, as well as the under tray, which you've seen before. And I believe that's just about everything. And then we'll take the water pump off and we'll get a better view. I'll get the camera down there and we'll figure out where exactly this coolant was coming from in the first place. So I got the water pump off. Here's the old one. You can see that kind of on this, when this is in the car, this is the bottom left right there, is pretty caked with coolant, so it may have been coming out the corner right there. It looks like it could have been coming out of that bottom left corner because, so you can see it looks like it's coming off and the spray moves towards the left, so it might have been squirting out there. Another thing, something I learned from B is for Build, is to take some cardboard and cover your radiator so when you're working down here you don't bend the fins, and you will if you don't cover it with something, because you're going to be running into that a lot with tools. Now on to replacing the water pump. What you want to do when you put this in is to get some old coolant and rub it around this O-ring here so that it doesn't stick and bind and fold when you're putting it in. You basically just want to lube it up. And this is the stuff that I'm going to use as far as making a gasket around it as an extra precaution. So what I'm going to do there is just put it around as far as I can, kind of a small bead around this outside edge. I'm gonna go ahead and put this water pump in right now, and we'll go from there. While that's drying, we can go ahead and replace these things. I set them backwards before, so it looks like this one is the upper with a little S curve in it, and this one with the tighter bend is the lower. So things are going pretty well. As you can see here, we have everything back together. I have those nice new hoses on with the new clamps that are much better looking. I have the reservoir put back on, the pulley and the water pump, and everything's put back together, the fan's back in, all that stuff. I filled up all the coolant. It's pretty full now. We now have to kind of burp the system, turn the car on, let it heat up. The thermostat can open up and run all the coolant through it. Everything seemed like it went pretty good. And from, like I showed you guys in the water pump earlier, I'm pretty sure that that's where it was coming from. So far so good with the car running. The coolant is pretty high. It still hasn't dropped yet to where I should fill it up quite a bit more. Obviously I'm gonna put this lid back on before it gets too hot. If you look underneath the car, there's no new spills. All that shiny stuff you see is from crap I spilled before. So far nothing's leaking, but we still have to wait until the system gets hot and everything's pressurized, and then we'll know for sure. The engine is up to temperature. Well, I know this gauge isn't that accurate, but it says it's pretty up to temperature. Can see that, but I'm going to get that under tray back on so we can go for a proper drive, really heat up the engine and get that coolant flowing. I'll bring the gallon of distilled water with me just in case we need to fill up any more, and we'll get this thing all finished up. Keep the RPMs up a little bit just to help this thing heat up a little quicker. Coolant temp still says it's okay. I'm gonna go out to this road with a little higher speed limit so that I can get on the throttle a little harder. Oh, that was a cop right there. Oh my gosh. Good thing it wasn't radaring though. All right, we have our oil temperature now close to 200 degrees, which is pretty close to what it usually is. Just about spot on for what the temperature is outside, about close to 90 degrees. I definitely know that the thermostat is open at this point. It is having coolant flow through. So now we're gonna go back to the house. I'm gonna park for a little bit and then let the car cool off and look underneath the car to see if there's any drips of coolant, if anything's leaking anywhere or overflowing anywhere. And then that's about when I think that we'll know for sure whether the leak has been stopped by what we did or not. Good thing is, I know we're not overheating, because by this point, from the pulls that I've done and stuff, we would be over 200 degrees by now, especially with the ambient temperature being 88. All right, guys, it's looking good. So I pulled in the garage. I've been sitting here idling for about 10 minutes. You remember before how there was coolant right there and all along the side of the intake? Well, if you look, it's all clean, so that's a good sign. Now I'm just going to back up in the driveway and see if underneath the engine, if there's any coolant that has dripped down there. And if not, then I believe we've had some success here. Check it out. I don't see anything down there. Not even a drop. Let's check in here one more time. It's all good. So what I want to do at this point is kind of give you guys a recap and let you know of what I think that it ended up being. I know I said a lot of things, like it could have been leaking around the thermostat housing. It could have been leaking from the seal, from the shaft seal on the water pump, or it could have been leaking from that O-ring around where the water pump actually goes in. Now after taking it out, and like I showed you guys earlier, I don't think it was coming from the thermostat housing. I do think it was coming from the water pump. I don't think that it was because of the bearing or the shaft seal being bad. I just think that that O-ring that goes around it just wasn't sealing right, and so it was letting some coolant slip through it. So I don't know that you really could say that this was due to a part failure. The water pump didn't really fail. Well, it kind of did because that gasket wasn't holding, but the part itself was still functioning okay. But obviously, replacing that water pump that had a new rubber O-ring in it and putting that RTV around the edges ended up sealing it pretty good. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and I hope that in some way or another it was helpful to you, especially if you end up having problems with the coolant, problems having leaks, or you have similar symptoms or coolant spots in your engine bay like I had and like I described in the previous episode, which if you haven't seen that, it might be helpful to watch. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you guys so much for coming back and watching yet another episode. If this is your first time heading over to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, and if you guys liked the video, which I hope you did, please give it a big thumbs up, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Thank heavens we're done with these problems. A couple more pulls, of course. Traction control off this time, and with that, here we go, 4,500-ish. Ooh, that was a good one. That was pretty good. The only thing that we're missing in today's episode is some tire squeal. So let's take care of that right now. This is for all you guys who stay all the way to the end. It was quiet, but we did a burnout.